Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, April 27th, 2020. On the show today, Universal asks, what'll it take for you to feel safe returning to the parks? And in our main segment, Jim tells us the history of Norway's Restaurant Akerhaus Princess Character Meal. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that now is the perfect time to fake your own disappearance. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
At this point, I look in the mirror and it's what I see is a sheepdog that needs to be sheared. And this is hard to say when you're a guy who only has 5 hairs, but...
I'm actually looking to buy some hair product online that will complete my turn into Bride of Frankenstein.
Ah, well, okay. That perhaps you and I can start a second career working at Halloween Horror Night.
So, I was doing a video chat yesterday with Mike Newell from Mouse World Radio, and we get on, and he sees me, and like in the first 5 seconds of the call, he's like, "Dude, you need a haircut." Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm a very gray sheepdog, so that's so.
It's the Bride of Frankenstein thing. She had that streak of gray going.
She did. So
yeah, there you go. All right, Jim. Let's do a quick shout out to subscribers over at DisneyDish.bandcamp.com. Thanks to new subscribers Karen J, Travis M, and G.E. Stevens, and longtime subscribers Jenny the Goofy Bomb. Her words, not mine. Our own Philip from the UK and Clayton S. Jim, these listeners are the union-assigned understudies at Carousel of Progress. When an animatronic character is out for maintenance, these folks step into the role. The training video for this job consists entirely of the pop and lock sequences for the 1984 movie Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. And it works, Jim. It works. True story.
So I have to ask, are there any method actors among the cast? Because remember, we did have the father lose his hand the other day. And it's that's a little too dedicated for me. I'm just saying. My
all-time favorite malfunction in Carousel of Progress is in the 1940 scene. So this was over New Year's. In the 1940 scene, the dad would occasionally tap his foot during the scene. The foot would actually tap really, really hard, like smack down on the ground. And it was loud enough that it would make a loud noise during the show. So we were all trying to time it and clap as it was happening. Also, that scene repeated a few times. We got stuck in the same scene. So we had ample opportunity to see the malfunction happen.
Dad's got rhythm.
The problem was we couldn't figure it out. So it was like, he'd talk for like 30 seconds and then it would bounce once, off the floor. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway.
You don't suppose that was actually some poor maintenance worker trapped under the Carousel of Progress? Sending out desperate Morse code to please let there be somebody in the audience. That's all I can reach is this shoe, damn it. So
that's funny. All right, Jim, let's do the Disney Dish news. Jim, the big news over the last week is that Universal Orlando has sent out a survey asking folks how comfortable that they will be or what it'll take for them to be comfortable returning to the parks. Let's go over the questions, shall we, Jim?
Sure.
So this was sent out on February 18th, and it starts with this question. Once state governments permit it, Universal Orlando will reopen. How likely are you to consider visiting the park if it reopens following its pre-coronavirus standard opening and safety procedures? Very likely. Likely, undecided, unlikely, very unlikely. So that's the first question. Second question has the same type of responses, and it starts with this premise. Below, you will find various measures that could help protect the health and safety of our guests and team members. We'd like you to evaluate each of these measures by telling us how you'd feel if it was implemented by Universal theme parks. How would you feel if Universal, number 1, requires all guests to have their temperatures taken? Those with fevers would have their temperatures checked with a handheld thermometer. Those testing consistently high would be refused admission. So how'd you feel about that, Jim?
Shanghai Disneyland has had this in place now for a while. I mean, mind you, that's just to keep Disney Town open, the restaurants and the shops there, but they funnel you into a tent so they can get and I think you've mentioned previously the problem of trying to get temperature reads in Florida is it's like trying to, let me take your temperature while standing on the sun.
Yeah. A lot of background noise, as the scientists say, right?
There we go. All right. Yeah. So the whole notion of setting up a structure to do this, I mean, remember, if you're coming in from the parking structure, you're in that rotunda just outside of
Oh,
City
right.
Walk.
Yeah.
And are they going to have the space to set this up? And if they don't, where is this new procedure going to be set up?
It makes the sense to do it in the parking complex. They could dedicate a section or two of the parking structure to that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, makes sense. By the way, I'd be absolutely fine with that. Number 2, requires all guests to undergo a rapid COVID test. Results in 15 minutes. Only those with a negative result would be allowed to enter. So this is the one I think that's tricky for a variety of reasons. We could sort of squint our eyes and say that your body temperature measurement is not a HIPAA protected piece of medical information, right? You could make that argument. Whether you have coronavirus is probably falls under HIPAA medical information in the United States. I'm not sure how they would possess this information, right? Once they know it and do something with it, I think there's a whole set of laws that fall into place. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, right? I think it's an absolutely a good idea. It would make me feel very comfortable, right? I think some legislation would have to be passed by the states and the feds to allow this kind of thing.
Anyone who's been paying attention to the news is testing here in the States has been in the news repeatedly because A, we don't seem to have a lot of the tests, and B, a very small portion of the population has been tested. So it's this whole notion of, so Universal is going to get access somehow to this pile of rapid COVID tests that they're going to be able to have the exact number for the number of guests who are coming to the resort that day. Right now, that's kind of a fairy tale right up there with the Three Bears. But, in 3 months, 6 months, it might be an entirely different situation. But the other thing here, Len, frankly, that results in 15 minutes. So it's like you take the test, and where exactly do you go to stand and wait to have your survey results announced? So
they're doing maybe they're doing the screening on level 1 of the parking lot, and you wait in level 2 of the parking lot, where you can do regular security screening in level 3 of the parking garage.
See, this is why I do a podcast with you. All right, always nice to work with someone who's smarter than you. So good, yes, okay.
So I don't know that there are any tests that can get results in 15 minutes right now. A friend of mine took a test on Monday and said the results would be back inside 4 days. That's a long time to wait, but maybe that's possible. The other thing is, to your
there's
point,
a lot of stuff to do on level 3 of the parking lot. Those 4 days will fly by. So
you bring up a good point though, that just for normal day-to-day operations, the Universal will need hundreds of thousands of these rapid tests. I mean, they're going to need to test their team members as well, right?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is an issue here as well.
Yeah. This thing, I think we all agree, in theory, is a great idea. There are some practical considerations that would need to happen that probably aren't going to be resolved in the next couple of weeks. All right, the next one I think we can all get behind. Strongly encourages all guests to wear face masks. I would say strongly encourage here to me means armed guards enforcing it. Why would you not require it?
There are two questions here. The question that actually follows the strongly encourages is a requires all guests to wear masks. The whole notion of, okay, in one scenario, it's optional, and the other, it's like, look, you don't get in here unless you're wearing a mask. Then that gets interesting because how do you enforce that in the park? Especially, think about it, you're bringing little kids in. And anybody who's ever had a child in a daycare center, it's like, it's a petri dish with feet that comes home and it's like, hi, we did clay today and I got bubonic plague.
I have heard from parents that they said that if masks are required, there's no way that their kids would keep them on, right? And that might be something where they self-select out of going to the parks. Like if Disney or Universal says, look, you're going to be required to wear a face mask, and you're going to be required to wear gloves. I'm all for gloves as well. I think that might cause some folks to self-select out of going. That might be acceptable, right?
I agree. Okay.
The next question is, how would you feel if Universal suspends X-ray conveyor belts at security? So I guess the point would be don't want your stuff touching other stuff on the conveyor belts?
Initially, I was confused by this survey question, but Dustin Fuse, who I do the Universal Joint podcast, pointed out that this is really the theme park equivalent of when you go to the grocery store now, and there's
you can't bring your own bags.
Well, that elaborate bit of theater where it's the customer in front of you leaves, and then the cashier wipes down the automatic belt that rolls your groceries down, and the scan point and the place where you put down your groceries. So the whole notion here is that by eliminating this X-ray belt thing, you don't have to have the poor security people, in addition to checking the bags, constantly having to wipe down the belt for every guest that puts, something through. I get it from that point of view. I genuinely do. You have to sort of pick your battles, especially in this situation. Universal's had the X-ray, I want to say, for at least 5 to 10 years now. It is something I think we've all become used to since 9/11.
Sure. So Disney doesn't use X-rays for bags that you bring into the park. It's a check.
Yep.
Right. I think we still need to do the checks because Florida's going to Florida.
Yeah.
People are just as likely to bring in a live python in their bag. It's Florida. It's Florida, Jim. It's Florida.
I'm sorry. You have to make a T-shirt of that. I'm saying that Florida is going to Florida. I love that. Florida,
right. So we need to. I think we still need to do the bag checks, but maybe not the X-rays. Fair enough. Okay. So the next set of questions are around in-park experience. So how would you feel if Universal closed indoor attractions and shows? I would probably say that I would be either unlikely or undecided on this one. And the reason is I think you can space the seating out for these things to where some of them are open regularly. Like you do every other row and then 3 seats between, or maybe, every third row. And then you do like 3 seats between families.
Deeper down in this very same survey that Universal floats the idea.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, the effect of seats guests having every other row and every other seat for rides and shows. So the notion.
I would even space them out farther than that. Yeah.
Okay.
The next one is suspends parade and nighttime show gatherings. I think we're all good with that.
Universal does, in fact, have practice at this because the Universal Singapore resort, which, by the way, finally closed, I want to say 2 weeks ago. It was the last thing open in Asia.
Noodle shops, and that's it.
But they were the ones who first were doing the temperature checks along with Shanghai Disney. But, they flat out said that one of the ways they were enforcing social distancing was by eliminating those artificial moments where people naturally crowded together to watch their nighttime lagoon show and their daily parade. So they at least have the data from Singapore to call upon to go, okay, we know that works. All right, let's put that in place.
Yeah, that's fine. They can still play the music as you're going around the park. I'm fine with that. We just don't need to stand together and watch it. All right, the next one is, how would you feel if Universal implements social distancing practices through the park, e.g., 6-foot distancing when queuing for lines, spaces between tables and restaurants, and mobile food ordering? I think we're all in agreement that that's a necessity.
Yeah,
right?
No, I agree. Yep.
Next one's kind of interesting. How would you feel if Universal implements a virtual line waiting system for all or most attractions?
And again, I think it was Dustin that pointed this out, that they already have a system like this in place for the Escape from New York with Jimmy Fallon, or Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon. So it'd be relatively easy to implement that technology and spread it out to each of the individual shows and attractions around the park.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. The implementation of it would be the tricky thing. Like, could you be in multiple lines at once? I guess you can't, because you can't be in real lines at once. But could you be in a, let's say they did a virtual line waiting system for most attractions. Could you be in a regular line and a virtual line at the same time? I suppose that's what FastPass is, right?
I guess so.
Sort of, yeah. All right, fair enough. I'm down with that one. I think it depends on the implementation. All right, next one, remove all 3D glasses from rides. I think then what we're saying is we're going to close the 3D rides too.
Not necessarily.
Oh, really?
I defer to our good friend Seth Kabursky, who I remember him talking about how Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, that attraction initially opened without 3D, and then it pivoted to a 3D version where the idea was that as you got on your flying bench, you were given, I want to say, Quidditch goggles. And
Okay.
then the decision was made, after a year or so of operation of that, this is kind of a pain in the ass. So it's like they reverted back to the old version. But I remember Seth, when he was doing stuff for the Orlando Weekly, reporting on that. So it's not really all that much of a hardship to swap out the media that you're using from where you need 3D goggles versus you don't need 3D goggles. So,
All right. Well, that makes sense then. Yeah.
yep.
Well, good. That's fine. Let's do that. Next one we've already mentioned, seat guests in every other row, in every other seat for rides at shows. I think actually there'll be even more distance than that. But I think, again, we're all down with that. That's fine. The next one, require team members to wipe down vehicles or seats between rides. I think I'm in favor of this. I wonder how much it would slow down the ride.
Back in the early 1990s, when the Imagineers were building Splash Mountain for Tokyo Disneyland, their research showed them that the Japanese weren't necessarily upset about riding in a flume ride and getting splashed when they hit the bottom of Chicken Hill or that sort of thing. What upset them was stepping into a log and sitting down and getting wet that away, as in there was still water. And what they wound up doing is they actually created between the offload and the load area a stop where Tokyo Disney cast members could step in and quickly wipe down the interior of the log so you would not get wet as you sat down. But the problem is, again, that was designed into the building. I mean, if you think about something, for example, like Rip Ride Rocket, where does that attraction actually ever stop?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, people step out, it moves up the track, people get in, and it takes off again. And it's like you would now literally have to stop that thing, wipe it down before guests could then climb in. And geez, I don't know, Len.
Well, I think operationally that would be a challenge. So imagine something like Peter Pan's Flight or Splash Mountain, where in Splash Mountain, the load unload area is the same. So you have guests getting off of the logs in Splash Mountain. So you'd have to have cast members hop into the log, spray it down, wipe it down, and then get back out. We all know that that's going to reduce the capacity of the ride. And with the social distancing, you're going to have to reduce the capacity of the rides anyway. I wonder how much that would affect it. I think it's a great idea. I think, again, from a practical perspective, how much time would it take? And then number two, if you're using a cleaning product on that, this is kind of a secondary concern, but how much cleaning product residue will be on those seats and then get on your clothes? Like, are you using bleach? We're all going to end up with bleach stains on our clothes? I don't know how that would work.
Let me tell you a story back in the 1980s when it was the height of people being concerned about HIV. And evidently there was a manager at Disneyland Park who decided we really need to be proactive about this. So they got the strongest possible spray material, and every night when they were shutting down the Emporium, cast members would go through and wipe down everything. But the problem is this stuff, Len, was operating room strength. And what ended up happening is that cast members suddenly noticed that their skin on their hands was cracking, their nails were coming up, that sort of thing. And it was one of these things where they had to really make a stink with management to the effect of, I realize you're making this safe for the guests, but you're really hurting us. And, they had to really push back hard before Disney sought out a brand new cleaning product that still did the job, but wasn't so abrasive or had after effects for the poor cast members who were doing the swabbing down of the Emporium. And I think a number of them actually wound up suing Disney, and in sort of the classic case, there was a settlement and then this all went away. But I just tell that cautionary tale. If you're going to do this, find a product that does the job, but is also friendly for the employee that's going to be wiping down hundreds of vehicles an hour.
Sure. And I think Disney, the cast members will be wearing heavy duty gloves and masks too.
I hope so.
For me, I'm envisioning like a Formula One race car pit stop where, no. I mean, like you hop out of the ride, people hop in the seats, they do their thing in like 3 seconds, and then they hop back out. Yeah.
In the best of all possible worlds, that's what's going to happen.
Can you imagine the workout that you would getting in and out of a Splash Mountain ride vehicle like 2 or 3 times a minute over the course of 8 hours?
Okay.
Your legs and butt would be so toned. Oh my God.
I may volunteer to do this for the summer, Len.
Hold on, let me click on job opportunities in Orlando. All right, let's go to the next one. It was enhanced sanitation, e.g., hand sanitizer stations everywhere, sanitation wipes for all guest contact areas. I think this is a no-brainer. In fact, I would go so far as to say guests should wear not only gloves, but let's say that Disney or Universal hands out multiple sets of colored gloves. Like in the morning, everyone wears blue gloves, and then at noon, we all switch to orange, and then at 4 o'clock, we all switch to green. This way, we're not carrying around the same pair of gloves all day. We all know that we've switched them, and it limits the opportunity for spreading disease.
I feel so bad for whoever it is who just did the redesign of the entrance area for Disney Hollywood Studios. I mean, you know how it's set up now with, the multiple bag checks and easy access to security points. And they've done the perfect job for getting that park ready for when Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land opened. They literally finished that in February, and now this happens. And now they have to go back and it's like, okay, so where are the hand sanitizer stations? And where do we hand out the gloves? And it's just sort of like, we're never done.
Well, you mentioned the work on Universal Studios, but they were actively working on a similar setup at Magic Kingdom.
This is true. We've all been walking through the redo of EPCOT's entrance plaza,
Right.
and kind of hope that given that some of these things were caught right in the middle, that they can adjust that much more quickly to including a hand sanitizer station and a place where they hand out gloves and the like.
But I think we're all down with the enhanced sanitation measures. All right, the next question implements touch-free payment for food, merchandise, and parking. I think we are all in line with that.
Sure.
Yeah. So that would be credit cards? No cash, I guess is what we're saying there.
How many folks get these days just sort of, wave their iPhone and there we go.
Right.
No,
exactly.
we're there. That one makes sense.
And then eliminate self-serve food options, e.g., team members would refill beverages. I think we're all behind this as well. I don't know. Maybe Derek Bergen decides that he really wants to do his Coke freestyle button pushing. Yeah, I can see Derek saying that too. Yeah, maybe so.
Len, we already live in this world. I mean, remember when we could all do our own self-serve of the Dole Whip at Captain Cook's, and they took that away. So I think if we've recovered from that moment in Disney theme park enthusiast history, we can deal with this.
I think so. That would be a challenge at the food courts in the various resorts, which have self-serve beverages. But again, they can just turn them off, right?
Yep.
Okay. The last set of questions are around how Universal might adjust park capacity. So the first one is, what if we limited attendance to 25% of park capacity? I think that's I don't know what off the top of my head what the Universal park capacity is, but let's say Magic Kingdom park capacity is 90K, but that's super crowded. I mean, if they limited it to 25% of that, which would be 22,500 people, that's barely more than a Halloween or a Christmas party event. I think that's fine.
Okay. If we double back on some of the stuff we just talked about, the seating people in every other row or several seats apart, or placing a new procedure in place where vehicles have to be scrubbed down before they can be dispatched again.
Right. It sort of makes up for, so the low park attendance makes up for the reduced attraction capacity.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah. The next option is limits attendance to 50% of park capacity. And again, I think we could see our way through to that. The next option is limits attendance to 75% of park capacity. I'm not sure that more than 50%. I think any number over 50% doesn't really count as, quote, limiting attendance.
No, this is probably the bridge too far.
Well, first of all, I don't think they average 75% of park capacity on a given day, do they? Oh, but I guess you're looking for like Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question is, how do you feel about requiring all team members to wear face masks? I am for that. Requiring all team members to have their temperatures taken. Those with fevers would have their temperatures checked again with a handheld thermometer. Those testing consistently high would not be permitted to work until testing fever-free for at least 24 hours. Again, completely in line with that. And we've talked about the challenges with that. And then finally, the last one, require all team members to undergo a daily rapid COVID test. Only those with negative results would be permitted to work. I think it's difficult to do it for the general public, I think, as an employer, just as you can require them to do random drug tests. You can require them to do a COVID test. Yeah, I think that's a different thing, right?
No, absolutely. And again, in a weird sort of way, this would be far easier to do with team members than it would be for guests arriving at the resort. But we still are not in this space where these sorts of tests exist in the number that one would need for this on a daily basis. So,
right, yeah, we're not quite there yet. But I think those are all great ideas.
Yep.
And they didn't ask this question, but I want to get your opinion of it, Jim. Two questions I'm going to ask. One, for Disney, what if they only opened half the hotels? Would you be okay with that? So let's say, for example, Disney's taking reservations for June 1st. Let's say that on June 1st, they say, okay, look, we're going to open up the resorts, but only half of them. Would you be okay with that?
As I recall this week, you got reached out to by Gary V like I did. And, Gary's a diabetic. He has reservations for July. And he was just questioning whether or not, it's safe. And to be honest, when I wrote back to him, it's like, given what Governor DeSantis has been talking about, it's entirely possible that the Florida parks will be open. But will it in fact be, if you take your family down there, will it in fact be a Disney World vacation? I mean, if you take
this is what I'm hearing from a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's like, if I'm required to wear a mask and I'm required to wear gloves, and there are no character greetings, and there's no parades or fireworks, and the ride capacity is reduced and certain rides are going to be closed, and the food courts are going to be closed and we can't get our own food, and this and that, and is it really worth the $4,000 I'm going to spend on vacation, or should I just stay home?
Yeah,
I think that's the challenge in interpreting these surveys, is that we could answer that we strongly agree or we're strongly comfortable with any one of these questions, but are we comfortable with all of them in aggregate? I still am. I think I've said this before. As soon as it's reasonably safe to go to the parks, I'm going to go to the parks.
What are the reasons you're going to go to the parks, Len? It's kind of your job, and
it is.
You would then have a baseline going forward. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, compared to what happened during COVID-19,
right, exactly.
Things are going great.
We would know that, yeah. But I think for people who aren't crazy like me, I think that would be a reasonable question for them to ask. Okay,
absolutely, yeah.
In the context of this, is it still quote a vacation, or do I just hold off until things are more like they used to be? That's a fair question.
This week, Georgia is supposed to first reopen bowling alleys and hairdressers and nail salons and that sort of thing. And then the following Monday, it's theaters and restaurants and that sort of thing. And what's been fascinating for me, Len, is to see the pushback from like restaurant owners who were talking about, well, look, we could reopen our restaurant, but what if people don't come back? As it is right now, my employees are on unemployment. And these are people who work for tips. They have a solid income stream as long as I'm closed. If we reopen and they come into work and then nobody shows up, nobody gets tips.
Right. And they can't claim unemployment at that point.
That's it, exactly. So this whole notion of, in fact, DeSantis has been talking about, well, should we create a special on-ramp, so to speak, for all of the Disney employees who've been furloughed for unemployment and that sort of thing.
And they did, actually. They automatically signed them up for unemployment insurance.
There we go. All right. But it's one of these situations where if you're somebody who works at a Disney restaurant, and the guys who, worked for years and finally got that amazing gig at Victoria and Albert's. But, if you go back to work and nobody's there.
Yeah, then you're worse off.
That's it, exactly.
And I think that's one of the things that these surveys are trying to gauge. Like, if we reopened, right, what percentage of guests say that they would be comfortable with these measures? And if that number is 90%, right, then that tells these parks that it may be worthwhile to reopen. But if the percentage of people who say that they're strongly uncomfortable, even in the face of all of these measures, right, if that number is like 90%, right, if people are just going to wait until there's a vaccine and herd immunity, then there's no point in reopening, right? Because you're not going to make enough money to reopen.
Did you see that piece in the Times on Sunday about the new normal? And there was actually language in the story about, again, you talk about the vaccine and that sort of thing. And in this article, they were talking about how, yes, there's all this talk of, 18 months we should have a vaccine, but that could be optimistic, that could be naive. I mean, it's one of these situations where back in the 60s, it took 4 years to develop a mumps vaccine, which they then started using in 67. On the other hand, Len, there's been a very well-funded, very highly focused effort for 30 years now to try to find a vaccine for HIV, and we still don't have it. We have a treatment plan, but we don't have a vaccine. And there's a number of people right now who are like, we should maybe not so focus so much on a vaccine as we should a treatment plan, especially with all of this talk of a second wave of COVID possibly this fall, along with standard flu season.
I mean, to your point, we haven't cured HIV, but we have made it to where it's, for a lot of people, it's just a long-term chronic condition.
That's it, exactly. But again, think about how long it took just for us to get to that till they developed the cocktail.
But still, I mean, so I think this is it's a very interesting survey. One more question I wanted to ask is this: we talked about Disney opening up half their hotels, and whether you'd be okay with that. What if they only opened half the parks? Because one of the concerns that they're going to have too is around staffing, right?
Yeah.
Number one, they sent all the college program kids home. The new wave of college program kids hasn't arrived. I'm not even sure that they will. Yeah. They sent home all the international cast members, or most of the international cast members. There's a decent chance that there simply aren't enough people to staff the parks. What if you could choose between 2 parks a day instead of 4?
Remember, there was a deliberate choice made back in the 90s because of healthcare costs and the like, that Disney World had this huge pool of dedicated full-time employees who'd work there forever. Yep. And what they then decided to do was take a number of the full-time positions and make them part-time, because again, you didn't necessarily have to give the very best healthcare to part-time employees and the like. But the problem is that a full-time employee who's been there for years is that much more dedicated, that much more knowledgeable, that has probably worked a number of different attractions. So, if you're in a position like this and it's like, okay, we need somebody to go over and work Dumbo, it's like, oh yeah, well, I did Dumbo 5 years ago, I can do this. Where if you've got part-time employees who only know the one attraction they work on and you don't open their park.
Yeah, then what?
To your original point, from an operational point of view, this is going to be you've got to walk before you can run situation. And I would honestly not be surprised if we only see 1 or 2 parks open.
Yeah, I've heard there's consideration to open 1 park per day. I think 1 park per day wouldn't do it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't know how you could open only 1 park, half the resorts, and then reduce capacity going into the park as well. From a logistics and a financial perspective, I don't know that makes sense. I think the minimum there would have to be 2.
If we're talking about the Disneyland Resort, or for that matter, the Universal Orlando Resort, 2 very different animals. I mean, you have parks that are effectively side by side, share back of house and all that. So those 2, in that situation, both parks would have to be open, or would make sense. Whereas if we're talking about the Walt Disney World Resort and the physical distance, but at the same time, you'd still have to operate the Skyway. You'd still have to operate the monorail. You'd still have to operate the buses, no matter what you do. And each of those then have their own COVID hose down cleanup procedures that would limit capacity or how many vehicles could be operating in at one time. And I honestly feel terrible for the folks at Disney who are sitting down trying to figure out how to make this work, because it's just...
Yeah, it's very challenging.
Very challenging.
All right, Jim, let's take a quick break. When we come back from our break, you're going to tell us about the history of the Princess Character Breakfast at Akerhaus. Before we do that, real quick, don't forget, Touring Plans is hosting a virtual movie night every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where the movie is related to a Disney or Universal theme park ride. Log on to the chat feature at touringplans.com, or on Twitter, use the hashtag #LinerMovieNight, and we'll make goofy comments together about the movie as it plays. So be sure to follow Touring Plans on Twitter to vote for each week's film. Folks, we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
All right, Jim, we're back. And you are going to tell us all about history of the princess meal at Akershus in Norway. By the way, I did this, I've done this in the last year, actually, just to sort of go back and revisit it. The food was better than I imagined, and the princess interaction was better than I imagined. But I'm not sure that it wasn't always this way. Why don't you bring us up to speed on the history of it?
It was May 6, 1988, that the Norway pavilion soft opened for the very first time. A $30 million addition to the World Showcase. Design looked like a Norwegian coastal village. Soft opened on May 6th, had its formal dedication on June 3rd. In fact, Norway's Crown Prince Harald V and Crown Prince Sonja, who, by the way, the both of them are now King and Queen of Norway, were on hand for the ceremony. Maelstrom, on the other hand, due to tech issues, that didn't get open till July 5th, 1988. Speaking of Maelstrom, or as we know it now, Frozen Ever After, did you see that story the Sentinel did earlier this week about that 27-year-old woman from Chicago who's suing Walt Disney World?
I did. Why don't you go over it real quick, though?
This woman's name is Amanda Peterson. She uses a wheelchair and has spina bifida. Mm-hmm. She reportedly checked with a Disney cast member before getting on whatever the ride vehicle on Frozen Ever After is called. But she checked with a cast member back on January 12th. And according to what Gabriel Rousson over at the Sentinel reported, Ms. Peter was told that Frozen Ever After just had small dips.
I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that, but okay, go ahead.
What complicates this is Amanda had undergone brain surgery just 6 weeks prior to her trip to Orlando. And she had been told by her doctor that it's okay to go forward with this vacation, but only if you do like slow-moving rides, like Small World. So again, that's supposedly why she checked with the cast member before getting on Frozen Ever After. And what Amanda experienced instead of small dips was, in her words, this is how the incident is reported in the lawsuit she's since filed. She experienced a violent backlash, which then left Ms. Peters with neck pain and mental fog, and since caused her to have slurred speech. She's suing for $30,000 in damages compensation. This is rude to say this of somebody who uses a wheelchair, but I wonder if Ms. Peterson actually has a leg to stand on legally.
Oh, Jim.
I'm sorry.
Straight to hell, Jim. Straight to hell.
Okay.
Funny, but straight to hell. All right.
As she's in the queue, she actually had to go past that sign, which reads, "Board a boat to Arendelle and set off in the world of frozen fun. This song-filled journey includes a backwards and forwards plunge down short waterfalls."
Okay, the word plunge should give you pause, right?
But again, I wonder if they're actually going to be able to chase down the cast members he supposedly talked with for the short dips and all that. But anyway, I have to assume that sign is, at least when it comes to the resort's liability. I don't know. It'll just be interesting to see what happens when this finally makes it to court. Back to EPCOT's Norway Pavilion now. So one of the first things you see, you come off World Showcase Promenade is, and again, Len, I've been practicing this because I do it so badly. Restaurant Akerhaus. Is that, did I get that right?
Akershus?
Akershus. Sure. I don't know why I can't say that name. As you already know, Restaurant Akershus is modeled after the real Akershus castle in Oslo, though given this commanding harborfront structure with its 6 earth and stone walls, it was built back in the 14th century to protect the royal residence. Maybe it's time we started calling it what the Norwegian people actually call it, which is the Akershus Fortress.
It is indeed a fortress. I've actually been to it.
Have you really?
In real life.
Okay.
I really did. It's right in the center of Oslo waterfront. It literally cannot miss it. I mean, it was, so if you're on a Disney cruise, by the way, it's directly to the right of where the Disney Magic docks. Yeah.
Okay. Cause I was looking at photos of it and couldn't decide, is it 4 stories tall, 5 stories tall? How big is it?
It's just massive. I mean, there's several stories. So the tour goes up and down the stairs, and there's a lot of ramp walking and things like that too.
Okay, got it. All right. Anyway, when Restaurant Akershus first opened to the public in June of '88, it featured a koldbort, or buffet, both with hot dishes and cold dishes. So traditional Norwegian fare like EPCOT cake, which is traditional all-beef meatballs that are flavorful, somewhat salty, kokt laks, which is poached salmon, and, of course, pickled herring, which brings us to the problem that Restaurant Akerhaus had right from the get-go with Disney World visitors. So after a long, hot day of walking around World Showcase and Future World, nothing says dig on in like a buffet that features many different types of cold pickled fish.
It's true. It's my first memory of Restaurant Akerhaus is the herring, which I tried. Mm-hmm. Right, and this was about 20 years before I actually went to Norway. So this is back in the day for me.
But here's the thing. As long as the Norwegian government was paying for the annual upkeep and staffing of their country's World Showcase pavilion, Restaurant Akerhaus was forced to continue to serve authentic Norwegian fare, which meant each day at lunch and dinner, this table service restaurant was lucky if it was at 1/3 capacity.
Really? It was that bad?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oof, okay.
This restaurant has seating for 284 people. If you work the math there, the fact that how much money Disney was leaving on the table because so many people would walk up to the restaurant, look at the menu and go, where is Mexico again?
Yes.
All of this changes in 2002 when the Norwegian government decides that it no longer wants to underwrite the cost of this World Showcase Pavilion, which now means that Disney Parks and Resorts is no longer beholden to what the sponsor wants them to do. How many people recall that Howie's Angels debacle back in the spring of 2002?
I do, because it's sort of famous just saying it that way. But why don't you give folks a background?
It's this group of seemingly well-meaning Disney fans, who would get up early every morning, call the resort reservation line, and then basically grab up all of the reservations to the Princess Breakfast, which was being held up in Cinderella Castle at the Magic Kingdom at Cinderella's Royal Table. What Howie's Angels would then do is then distribute these Princess Breakfast reservations that they'd managed to waggle to other Disney fans online, people that they deemed worthy, which the problem was that it set all of those Disney fans who were calling the reservation line at the same time that Howie's Angels were, and only to find out that, I'm sorry, we're already booked solid for that date. So they began to complain directly to Disney, which is why the Walt Disney World Resort announced on May 16th that starting on June 9th, 2002, if you wanted to reserve a seat at the Princess Breakfast being served at Cinderella's Royal Table, a guest would first have to put down a credit card deposit. I want to say it was $10 for adults and $5 for kids. And that effectively shut down what Howie's Angels was doing. But the folks that, who handled dining reservations at Walt Disney World sort of took the 30,000-foot view here. And it's like, look, clearly we're in a situation where demand is exceeding supply, at least when it comes to Princess Breakfast at Walt Disney World. And yet we have the Restaurant Akerhaus over at EPCOT, which isn't even open for breakfast and is only doing 1/3 of the business it should when it comes to lunch and dinner. It's like, why don't we try launching a second Disney Princess Breakfast experience over there and see what happens? That did set up some operational issues. Face it, in a situation where World Showcase doesn't open until 11 a.m. and you're offering a Princess Breakfast that starts at like 8 o'clock in the morning, that means you have to have your ticket people up front understand that the guests with the reservations are going to come in and they need priority to get in. And likewise, your security person is going to have to be there at the rope that's separating folks from being able to get to World Showcase. And it's like, okay, you get your reservation, okay, let me lift the rope here and you go through and all that. But again, it's like, okay, we're willing to do that if this finally gets a crowd into Restaurant Akerhaus. And Len, they first announced this thing on July 16, 2002, that beginning on July 28th, they'd start serving this Princess Breakfast. It was only supposed to be a test, was only supposed to run through October 26th. Of that year, and it got so much demand that by August 8th, they pushed out the Princess Breakfast all the way to December 31st, 2002. People were like, oh, I have to do this, and oh my God, this is so great. Well, let me correct myself here. It's not capacity for 284 guests, it's 264 guests.
Okay.
Interesting thing is Cinderella's Royal Table, on the other hand, up in the Magic Kingdom, there's only seating for 184. This really became the relief valve. In fact, that's the thing. When people would call and try to get Cinderella's Royal Table, they go, I'm sorry, that's booked for that day, but are you aware that we're offering a similar experience over at EPCOT? So no, absolutely. God, the price point, Len. Back then, it was $15.99 for adults and $8.99 for children 3 to 11.
Those were the days, Jim.
Those were the days. They did so much business with folks coming to Epcot for this Princess Breakfast experience that by April of 2005, the folks who were running Restaurant Akerhaus were just sort of, look, why are we stopping? So that's when they switched over to Princess Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in fact, this was so hugely popular that later in 2002, that's when over at the Grand Floridian, the 1900 Park Frere restaurant, which was already doing that Mary Poppins themed breakfast, they started doing what they originally called Cinderella's Gala Feast. But I think starting in 2008, the name of that changed to Cinderella's Happily Ever After Dinner. I've been trying to track down when, because of this demand, Crystal Palace then switched over to the Winnie the Pooh dining experience. So we'll have to circle back on that story at another point. But yeah, character dining just basically kind of exploded. And again, largely because of what happened with Howie's Angels. So folks at Norway thought things were crazy with Restaurant Akerhaus. But in 2013, when Anna and Elsa came on the scene, that they went from crazy to crazy you could see from space. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
we went from crazy to crazy you could see from space. It's true. Those lines were, I think that was the first time I'd ever seen a 300-minute line for an attraction on a day that wasn't New Year's Eve. Like, I mean, we got kind of all expect those sorts of waits over Christmas, but that was the one where it was like day after day after day after day just to see those characters. That was really surprising.
In the fall of 2013, right across the way from Restaurant Akerhaus, they had the initial Anna and Elsa meet and greet, which only lasted like a week to 10 days, Len, because then they went over to the studio.
The studios are Magic Kingdom.
We'll really have to do a full show about this because there was this fascinating bit of turf war between Disney Hollywood Studios and EPCOT when it came to Anna and Elsa. Because again, always the argument was like, look, when a new animated character debuts, traditionally, it goes over to the studio because this is the place where we celebrate film and television. So if they're new, they start here. And then after, the Blu-ray DVD is out, then we discuss where else they go, where they go to live.
Yeah. In the parks we're having none of that. It was basically a turf war, right?
Oh, totally. But again, we'll save that for another show. But again, if anybody remembers what the initial Anna and Elsa meet and greet was like across from Restaurant Akerhaus, because again, I think that was the moment where for a lot of people when they saw the somewhat crazed response to the sisters, and it's like, this is going to be big. And we got to remember, this is October. This is weeks before the movie opens in theaters. So,
right. Yeah, it was. I remember it well. It was. We were all trying to figure out what was going on with that. Anyway, good review, Jim.
No, I tried.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the Disney Dish show today. Please head on over to disneydish.bandcamp.com, where you'll find exclusive shows never before heard on iTunes. Some of those upcoming exclusives will tell you about a secret 1972 memo that Jim found detailing the rides Disney was planning to build in Orlando. And I'm telling you, folks, I just saw the list this week, and I've never heard of some of these proposed rides. So I'm really excited to hear what Jim has found. On next week's regular show, the history of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who's shaving the wool coats of his Dorset sheep herd into poodle cuts for this year's livestock competition at the Ozaukee County Fair, July 29th to August 2nd in beautiful downtown Cedarburg, Wisconsin. Admission is free. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.